Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Abingtonites podcast, Comet Convos. My name is Hannah Siddiqui and I am your host. So getting into today's episode, which is called When Worlds Collide, Bridging the Gap Between Teachers and Students. I am so excited to have a panel of 4 wonderful students and teachers with me. So a little overview of this episode. We are going to be asking these teachers some questions about their teaching experience, and we're also going to be asking the students some questions. And I also have some questions prepared for both of them so we can see kind of their different perspectives. And what kind of inspired this episode was that when I was thinking about potential episodes for the podcast, I became really interested in the idea of having both teachers and students on the same one. And so, hence this episode. And I am really excited to get into it. And that being said, I would love for our 4 guests to introduce themselves. So first off, we have JT Healey.
Are we talking, or are you introducing us?
You can introduce yourself.
I'm JT Healey. I'm a junior here at Abington Heights.
Yeah.
All right, I'm Owen McVety. I'm also a junior here at Abington Heights.
And then we have Dr. Pryle.
Yeah, so I'm Dr. Pryle. I've been an English teacher here for 14 years.
And Mr. Uram.
I'm Mr. Uram. I've been a science teacher here for 27 years.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I'm so excited to get started. And with that, we'll just dive right in. First off, I have some basic questions for our teachers. So whichever one of you wants to go first. But first I have, what is your favorite part about being a teacher? Either one of you who wants to go first.
Claude, you go first.
Okay,
We'll switch.
so-
Maybe we'll do that. I'll
Yeah,
go
that's
first
a good
next time.
idea.
A favorite part for me is connecting with students and seeing students grow, and it's very individual for each student, but when you see them just really progress, like they grow in their own thinking, they grow in their own writing, or we do book clubs in my class, so maybe they didn't like reading, but then all of a sudden they start to like it. Those types of changes are really the favorite parts for me.
That's awesome. Thank you, Dr. Pryle.
Pretty similar. Just the conversations with the students over time, and I have a unique perspective where I teach freshmen and seniors. And sometimes they come back as seniors, and you could definitely see in 4 years that growth. But most of it is the conversations that you have as they're working in class, and that's what I miss most when we were doing Zoom and all the videos. Is kind of lost that for a year. So reflecting back, I think conversations, just getting to know, and those relationships you establish over time.
And how do you think, the question for both of you, how do you think your kind of perspective differs? Mr. Uram, you having students, both freshmen and seniors, you get to see them for 4 years, and Dr. Pryle, you only have them once. So how do you think your, definition of growth changes with the students?
I mean, mine is shorter because it's just from that 1 year. And, obviously I see you guys in the hallway and we at outside school even, right? But that intense, trying to help you grow intellectually and emotionally and as a person and all that, that just happens in the 1 year for me. So that's really what I base it off of.
And I see it in that 1 year, especially freshmen. There's a big learning curve that happens between September and this time of the year. And you could really see that change in those students. And as I said, as I get to see you guys travel for the next couple years, that growth between like when you were a freshman to now, you're living it every day. You don't probably experience it the way we see it. But it's remarkable. And it's a lot too. You grow up, get old so quick.
So I think this kind of leads us into a good way to get into our next question, which is, because you guys see students grow so much and you see, their different kind of learning styles in that way, what would you say is the best advice you could give to students to succeed in your class?
I would say you have to be active in your education. You have to, and I ask seniors a lot, what advice would you give to incoming freshmen? Don't be afraid to raise your hand. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Not everything's going to be easy. And when you need help, you have to ask for help, whether it's with your peers or seeking us out during the class time, whatever. But I think that's the biggest thing. You got to be active in your own learning. We can't make you learn things, but we could be there for you and with you and help you and guide you through that process.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I would add to that, don't be afraid to make mistakes, right? You just have
So
to.
true.
And you have to be willing to make mistakes in front of other people. And in my mind, when I see students who are able to do that, maybe right from the beginning of the year, even, I'm like, okay, we're going to make some progress here, right? Because they're not afraid to just as I said, make mistakes, say the wrong answer, whatever it is. It's just like you're willing to try, even if other people see you trying.
Mhm.
That's awesome.
And Hannah, if I may, that kind of jumps up to the question number 3 that we have prepared, which is what motivates, especially me and JT, to continue to work hard in school. And I think Dr. Pryle and Mr. Uram both iterated that really nicely, how kind of like not even growing from an intellectual and academic manner, but growing from like a more social and emotional way, like not being afraid to be wrong. That was something that I know myself and a lot of people struggled with, especially freshman year. And now 2 years later, I feel like everybody has grown a lot, and how I'm less afraid to be wrong, and I think everybody's more confident in raising their hand, and that's one of the things that motivates me to work hard in school. JT, I don't know if you
Yeah.
feel the
You
same
said
way.
we're still motivated.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe not. Maybe. But JT, what genuinely does motivate you, or did motivate you?
It's a little sad, but I mean, I guess I've always had a natural like wanting for achievement. I mean,
You're curious too.
yeah, that's true. I like learning, especially if I'm interested. But if I'm not interested, that's kind of where I said like I can lose motivation. It comes down to like wanting to learn what you're learning. If you don't want to know it, you're not gonna learn it. Like I'm taking chem now, and I love the teacher and I like the class and the people in it, but it's just not what's interesting to me, and that's kind of why I don't feel as motivated in the class, because it's not something I want to learn. But I think a pattern I noticed with some of my favorite classes, that includes both of your guys, is that I really was fascinated in what we were learning next, and I was actually willing to go out of my way to practice it and study it because I actually wanted to know more about it. So that's probably the biggest part.
So what do you do when you're in a class? You still have to succeed. You're still concerned about your grades. That's motivation. But if you're in a class that you're not so much interested in, you still have to be successful in that class. So what do you do? How do you fight that?
You gotta really fight it out. I mean, you gotta tell yourself, like, I know I don't like it, but I'm gonna have to do my very best to commit myself to it, even if I don't like it. And who knows, if you do it enough, maybe you will start liking it. Maybe if it starts coming easier to you after you practice, you'll like it a bit more. You'll look forward to learning more of it. But
And Mr. Uram, how I phrase that in my head is I look at it as like I like numbers, so I look at it as a long-term investment,
Yes.
right? So doing like bad in a class, while it might not have any large effect now, it's going to affect getting into colleges and preparing myself for later on in life when I'm in the workforce in 20 years and I'm doing a task that really isn't enjoyable, but you still have to do it to get that next paycheck, which is, I think, a very important skill that some of the less interesting classes in high school are actually preparing us for, even if they're kind of boring or uninteresting.
Definitely. I was just going to say, I think in life there's a lot of things that we may not necessarily look forward to doing or are our favorite things, but they're necessary. And without coming to school and even kind of finding out what your passions are and recognizing that you're not going to love everything, you're not going to find what you want to spend the rest of your life doing. And I think that's important too, and I think it's a good thing to have balance in doing what you love to do, but also doing what's needed to thrive and to succeed in life and in school. So I think that you guys had some great points there.
Yeah, and even if you do only the things you love, you're only gonna be stuck in that small circle. You're never gonna grow as a person and find new things that you might enjoy, even if you don't enjoy them at first.
Yeah.
even if you're not as good as it, it's about getting out of your comfort zone. A lot of high school, I mean, taking classes that you don't feel interested in at first or you don't think you'll do well in, but sometimes you just kind of have to throw yourself out there and hope it works. And if it does, then great. If it doesn't, then you learned a lesson, and that's kind of the mentality you have to have throughout it.
Right.
with all respect, both of you guys are a little bit older than us, and
Just a little bit, not much.
Just a little.
again, with all respect, you've been around a bit longer, and I'm sure both of you can come up with examples where this holds true, where you got to do things you don't enjoy or you don't find interesting to succeed.
It's true your whole life. It's true all the way into adulthood. I mean, we both love teaching, right? But that doesn't mean that I love every minute of everything that happens, right? There's plenty of things that are difficult or boring or tedious. And all of you said it. You have to keep your eye on like the big picture, right? Like the ultimate goal, right? So for me, the ultimate goal is education. I believe so strongly in education just in general. I love learning, right? This is why I became a teacher, because I know the joy that it can bring. So when you get to those parts that are a little difficult or a little bit boring, it doesn't matter, because you're doing it for this greater goal that you have in your head, right? So this idea of, what's the ultimate good that I'm after? What are the values that I'm trying to uphold? And it doesn't mean every minute of that is like a peak moment. It's all just one big picture. So yeah.
Or just life in general, changing diapers. I don't really
Yes.
miss that. Those little things that were a lot of work and you did not look forward to, and you hope the child ran into the other rooms where mom was when that event occurred. But yeah, all parts of your life you're going to have to do that. You just got to muscle through it and realize, like you've been saying, there's a goal and there's a purpose, and don't look at it as punishment or
So like
a negative.
what stuck out to me is that I feel like every teacher I've ever had has said the same thing, and that's that as a teacher you learn just as much as the students. Do you think that's true, or do you think it's just kind of a thing teachers say?
100%. Like, so every year students bring up something about the text that I've taught for 14 years straight. A new idea crops up. Now, I'm not saying every day, but like often enough that I'm like, wow, I'm still learning from this. And also the material itself is, things that make it to the status of like classic or even just something great to read or study. It's because they have so much to give, right? So I learn from the books themselves every year, but then I learn from the students for sure. Even though you're newer learners, you still have great ideas. It doesn't, just because you're a newer learner to something doesn't mean that you can't have a really great thought about it. So I say true.
Okay.
I don't know though. What do you think,
What do you think?
Mr. Uram?
Yours is a lot more concrete.
Well, I
Literally.
mean, my subject matter is changing all the time because there's always new technology. I mean, to think like LiDAR technology, for instance, could be used today to look at remains of ancient civilizations just by flying an airplane over it, and it takes away the vegetation. Or just the way we use imaging to see rocks that are buried 5,000 feet below the surface. That didn't exist when I first started studying that. So that's all always being reincorporated into our knowledge base that we can use and expand. And then like students that's the best thing I think in the sciences I teach. They ask questions I don't know the answer to. And I'm like, that's awesome that you even came up with that question. I don't know, but we could try to find that out. And you always start with Google it and see where we
Right.
get started. Then we can look in certain books or whatever. So yeah, it's always changing. That's a good thing. That's a positive thing. It would get old if it was just the same thing
Yeah.
over and over.
Yeah.
So
I feel like the key is like giving the students space to like
Oh,
talk
definitely,
and have their ideas. So
Definitely.
I think if you ran a class that was very just cut and dry and like right answer, wrong answer, you might not have that experience. Whereas if you
Mhm.
teach in a way that the students have space to ask questions and they feel confident about it and they trust, it's a culture of trust in the classroom. We talk about that a lot in teaching. Then that's where you really get these moments and the rewards.
So I'm interested then, would you say that your perspective about teaching or your teaching philosophy has changed over the years accordingly?
Well, absolutely. I think in the beginning you come out. I wasn't trained like a traditional teacher. I went to school for environmental science and geoscience, and I got certified along the way. So I wasn't an education major. Came second. But anyway, like the philosophy coming in the beginning was you're just almost like rote memorization. Here are the most important things that I feel you should know out of a book. Write them on the board. Kids copy. They memorize it. Take a test. And today I hardly even give notes. It's more like a guide. Let's learn about this topic and let's dive in. And I just give different areas to dive into and allow you to explore it and ask questions. And I'm just trying to, frame that and keep it all in the context of what we're learning. But it's much different from 20 some years ago. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and so more student centered. Yeah, 100%.
Exactly. That's
I
what
agree.
you would call that. It's a student centered environment.
And for me too, on top of that, I'll say, when I was a younger teacher, I took more things personally. Like if a student didn't have their work or just whatever it was, or I would just say, I would connect it to myself personally. Now, as a more experienced teacher, I don't do that at all. I know that everyone is just bringing the best possible version of themselves that day into the classroom, and that's what we're all going to work with. And it might mean that they don't have this or they don't have that, or they're struggling in this way, especially post-COVID. It's like everyone's just doing the best they can, and my job is to meet everyone where they are and try to help them at that point.
That's awesome. Thank you guys for that. And now I'm going to ask JT and Owen a question, and that is, what is one thing you wish that teachers understood more about what it's like to be a student today? It's kind of segueing away, but I'm curious.
That's an interesting one, because I feel like that's very much depends on the teacher. You know what I mean? Because Dr. Pryle has correct me if I'm wrong, you have a doctorate in teaching.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And Mr. Uram was not originally intended to be a teacher, so you both come at teaching with kind of a different perspective. And while I had both of you guys, and you're two of my favorite teachers, I think it's very different. I think it's very much depends on the teacher. But I guess one thing I honestly don't know, because it's also student oriented. I don't feel I'm in a place where I can speak on behalf of an entire student populace, because everyone is their own individual. You know what I mean?
What do you think, JT?
I think, as Owen put it, it's really individualized. Everyone, I mean, of course, we're in the same spot during school, and that's about 7 hours. Everyone goes home and they are doing something else. Some are playing a sport, some are doing an activity, some just go home, some take the bus, some drive. Everyone is in these different situations. And it's really, like, you'll hear kids say, oh, teachers need to realize that. Like, oh, it's a lot harder, and we have other classes, and they always think that's only their class. Well, of course, that's true in a lot of cases, but it's more so that you can't put a single answer to that, because it is so different depending. Every single kid in this school, about give or take 1,200, has something different going on. They're always going to have something going on outside of school, and they all, as soon as the bell rings, they're all going different places. So it's kind of tough to put it on an individual answer, because it's the student body's too dynamic to give one answer to what teachers should know.
Yeah, that's well put. I would agree with that. Okay, so I have some questions for both of you guys. Now I'm curious to see how you both answer them differently. But first off, we'll start with an easier one. What is your favorite memory from teaching or being a student here? Whoever would like to go first.
Mr. Uram, I think this is calling your name.
Favorite memory?
Yes.
Phew. Go ahead, Dr. Pryle, if you have something. You can
So
jump in
is the memory about being a teacher, from being a student, or anything?
Oh, that's a great. You can do it about anything. I didn't think
Oh.
about student, but if you have one.
I mean, I do have a student one. So when I was in 6th grade, and I grew up outside Philadelphia, so this was in my grade school. So I was the type of student that, like, I literally never opened my mouth. I was petrified, like it didn't happen. And I had a teacher in 6th grade, and I had been absent, and I missed something, and she was like, does anyone have a question? And I very, like, tentatively, like, raised my hand and asked a question. It was a really basic thing, but afterwards, after the class, she said, I'm so glad you raised your hand. That was so great. You just did a great job asking that question, and gave me this sticker of, like, a smiley face. This was like pre-emojis, so it was like old-fashioned smiley face. And I brought it home, and I, like, put it on my mirror at home, and I, like, looked at it, and I was so proud of myself for opening my mouth, and I was so happy that Mrs. Stanton noticed that. It just stuck with me, like, till now, like, I remembered that moment. And I feel like I just took that with me, and even in becoming a teacher, like, just that, again, that moment of connection, I remembered what it meant. So that was really my favorite.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
And one thing I will say is about being in your classes, I've always felt so comfortable participating, and I've always felt that you have encouraged that, and you're just so lovely whenever anybody does speak in your class, no matter how stupid my observation is. You are very nice.
She was never stupid, Hannah, but like I know
Hey,
what
bro.
you're saying, and thank you. But that's just it. Like I knew that, and it didn't miraculously change that moment in sixth grade. I
Right.
there proceeded to like not say anything for
Mhm.
most of my schooling years, but like I knew I always had something to say, but I was too afraid to. So that's
Right.
like my thing. You know, don't be afraid. Just try to create that safe
Mhm.
space where students can speak up. Yeah.
That's a lovely memory. Thank you for sharing that.
I'll go next. I think my favorite memory, I guess, probably goes back to elementary school. I went to CSE. It was the best elementary school in the district. You can't tell me otherwise. Miss Owens is in the back, nodding her head along. She agrees with me.
This is true.
And my favorite memory from that was probably like the recesses and the field days, because that was a time when you just got to spend time with your friends. And I think we've been focused a lot as not only a district, a society, and even in this conversation with just the five of us, focused on academics. But a big part of school is also interacting with other students and teachers. And while school is traditionally focused, and when you think of school, you think of going and like learning, like opening up a textbook, or like listening to a slideshow. But I think a big part of school is also like the social and emotional learning that will prepare us for later on in life. So yeah, just like spending time with friends at recess and kind of figuring all that out. I remember playing wall ball at CSC, which was, it's kind of a random one, but at least anybody who went to CSC gets it. That was a huge part. And yeah, I just guess the field day especially was awesome.
You guys both CSE?
Me and Hannah were.
I didn't go to CSE,
Oh, you didn't go
actually.
to
I
CSE.
didn't go to elementary school here. I went to Dunmore, which I
loser.
know Mr. Uram has a very strong opinion about Dunmorians.
Oh, I love them. They're beautiful people. Right, Mr. Suma? I started my teaching career at Clark Summit Elementary. Now it used to be South Campus. It was ninth and 10th grade of the
Yeah.
high school at that time. Not to date me by any means. But to piggyback up on what you're saying, I remember a few years ago in my AP class, a student at the end of the year, she said, you know, isn't it great how we all work together in this? And I looked at her and I said, yes, but in my head, it's like by design. Our focus is to get you to come in here and talk about that in that class, environmental science, with everybody, not just me dictating this, that. You sit down with your group of 4 or 5 people and you're talking about environmental issues, whatever we were talking. So a part of at least I think the same with you, we want you to do that social part. Great ideas come when you're all working together like that. So that's, some of that is by design.
Mm-hmm.
Although field day is a fun time, there's no doubt about that.
That was the
I
best.
miss
That was the
recesses
best.
myself.
I like that Owen brought that up. I think we get really lost in, obviously schoolwork is so important and learning is very important, but sometimes the stress of that takes us away from the joys, the little things that we loved back when we were in elementary school, and how much we looked forward to just like a field day, for example. Whereas now sometimes we get so caught up in the haze of trying to be perfect at everything that we forget about the little kid that we once were and how excited we were about little things like that. JT, do you have a favorite memory? You went to OLP.
Yeah,
Village, didn't you?
so elementary school, I went to a small Catholic school in the area, OLP, and then, a couple memories there. We had field days and stuff, but I think probably the biggest one would be transferring here. So it was beginning of 7th grade. That's when I transferred from OLP. So I probably knew approximately around 4 people here. That's an estimate, but I didn't know anyone. OLP was weird in the way that there were only 20 kids per grade. So you knew those kids, you didn't know anyone else. Those were your friends, and you didn't get much of a choice, of course. But going to Abington was so overwhelming because there's 320 some kids in our class, and it was just polarizing. Like stepping into this giant middle school, going from 20 kids in a class, like you could fit your entire graduating class in a single classroom. That's how most of the classes were. To 320, and there's all these different kids. At OOP, everyone was like almost like cookie cut. They all kind of felt like the same thing, down to the fact that we wore uniforms. And of course, that's not the case, but that's always how it felt. And then at Abington, everyone was just so different, which is like something that eventually you have to learn, that everyone is not going to be that OOP kid in a, you know, the khaki pants and the tie and everything. That there are different people out there. And I think Abington's good about that, because we are like a mix of like, you'll have kids from like Waverly and you'll have kids from Newton, like very, very different ends of the spectrum. And that's kind of when it hit me at Abington, that they were like all different kids from different places. There are like, I had never known, like I had obviously heard about like, yeah, there are kids here from like other countries and stuff like that, but I've never met one, or at least I never knew that someone was. And then all of a sudden I get to Abington and kids are like, I'm talking to kids and they're from all over. I mean, they look different. They bring different food to lunch. They speak different languages at home. Like, and you realize that like people are different and they're in this community. And that's kind of like, it hit me. Like it was like a culture shock basically. Like OOP, everyone felt this like the same person. There was no diversity. It was kind of very vanilla. And then Abington was just very like, that was the biggest shock, I think. Like, just obviously in a good way. Like you have to gain that kind of sense of people are different from me, and that's okay. And that's kind of when it hit me that first day of 7th grade.
Wow. That was great, JT. Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
That is an awesome realization. And I think that's such an important thing for any student, any child to have, is the exposure to different perspectives. Okay, so I have one last question, because we are almost running out of time. So I'm going to ask one last question, and that is, what piece of advice would you give to somebody starting out in your position? So we'll start, Owen or JT, do you want to say what advice you'd give to a new student? You can say high school student, elementary school student, whatever you guys are thinking.
And I'll go ahead. Just like I tell this to all my friends' little siblings, to my little siblings who are starting freshman year, or you know, in the middle school, just like stay focused and kind of like it's okay to like have different hobbies and kind of be a different person than your friends and your peers. But academics are important, but also like having a life outside of school is important as well. So obviously people want to get into good colleges, they want to be successful in life, but another thing that is important is kind of enjoy it while you're here. You know what I mean? Because like I said before, a lot of school is focused on like listen to this lecture, watch this presentation, like take these notes, write this essay. But I think also kind of an underscored part of school is, I keep bringing it up, but like growing socially and like don't be afraid to be your own person, and like whatever you do, just be confident in it, because that goes a long way. That would probably be my best advice. Just be confident in whatever you're doing.
JT,
Well, do one of the teachers go? Just
Oh,
for
yeah.
time's
Do you want
sake,
it? Yeah,
and if we have
let's do
time,
it.
I'll go, 'cause I just-
So, like for a new teacher,
Sure, yes, new teacher.
so my advice would be, stay connected to the passion of it. Like stay connected to why you became a teacher. You should have a sense of mission about it. You should have a sense of purpose, right? So what I was saying earlier about that, like that sense of you see the big picture. You're in it because you believe in education and because you like young people and you believe in learning and you see the difference it makes in people when they learn and they grow and all of that. So because teaching is hard, teaching is really hard, and especially in those first few years, you're just bombarded with so much stuff, and you just got to hang in there and remember like why you're doing it and what it means, because it means everything, right? It's the whole point. And I tell young teachers a lot, you didn't get into this job because you thought it would be easy. You got into this job because you knew it would be meaningful, right? And so as long as they can stay connected to that, they'll make it through that first couple of years. Yeah.
I love that. Mr. Uram, did you have anything to add?
Well, I would say for students and for new teachers, you got to work hard. It's that simple. Miracles don't happen. You have to go out and you have to work. If it's a job you don't like, you work hard at it and find another job. Whatever it is in life, you got to work hard. If you want to play sports, you got to show up. You have to practice. there's nothing. What would you say? Like the athlete that has all the talent, but they're not practicing. That kid that works hard will catch up to that talent eventually, academically and athletically. And new teachers, yeah, it's hard to do this right. You have to work hard. I mean, and you're going to find that any profession that you choose to do, if you want to be good at it, you're going to have to work hard at it. Because there's a lot of people out there that work harder than you if you don't.
Where's the bell? Sorry. So I think that's about our cue. Thank you so much for you guys for coming. I really appreciate it. I love these people so much. They're just incredible. And thank you guys for listening once again. If you haven't already checked out our first episode, feel free to watch that one as well. And if you want to get involved in this podcast or in age meeting in general, I encourage you to stop by the SLC and see Miss Owens, or if you want to get involved with the podcast, you can talk to me or Miss Owens. And yeah, we'll be having even more episodes coming. And thank you for joining us today. I appreciate everybody for coming as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.